Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we are going on an adventure to the Tour Du Mont Blanc, a very popular long-distance hike around the Mont Blanc Massif, a compact collection of majestic snow-capped mountains in Europe. It's approximately 110 miles around, and it passes through Switzerland, Italy, and France. Just do a quick Google search on Mont Blanc Massif, and you're likely to experience the awe that I did just looking at the images. According to Wikipedia, this is a hike that about 20,000 people attempt each year. And what I love about it is that it's a hike that combines the beauty and the majesty of the mountains through a week-long trek without having to carry gear or sleep in a tent at night. Today's guests recently completed the Tour du Mont Blanc, where they were extreme adventurers by day and living in the lap of luxury by night. I have with me my friends, David and Cassandra Hradek. They've been married 10 years and they live here in Charlotte, North Carolina with their golden doodle, Ryder. David's an account manager for IDEX Fire and Safety, where they manufacture fire and safety equipment. He's also an avid soccer player. Cassandra is a success manager at Doximity, where she helps hospitals increase clinician awareness. She is also both a teacher and student of yoga and a certified Precision One nutrition coach. These two work hard and play hard, and Tour du Mont Blanc is just one of the many adventures that they've taken. But for me, after hearing about this specific trek around Mont Blanc and seeing the photos, I have most definitely added this one to my personal list. Cassandra, David, welcome to the campfire.
Hey, Scott.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to share this story. I had so much fun hearing about it with you guys the other day when we were kind of first talking about it. So this was a super cool adventure. And before we jump into the adventure itself, if you guys just kind of elaborate a little bit about who you are and what life is like for you here in Charlotte. David, we'll start with you.
Well, as you said, we work hard and play hard. So that's that's kind of the story of our life. But we try and do as much hiking as possible. Our dog Ryder loves to hike. And so if we're not working, we're usually hiking or hanging out with him.
Love the outdoors. And he's an outdoor pup, isn't he?
Very much so.
Yeah. Cassandra, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it in the intro. If you ask me who I was, I'd just say that I'm someone who enjoys being outside. I don't care what I'm doing. If I'm outside, I'm happy. And so I like connecting with the outdoors. I like connecting with new people. I like adventures, and I like to have fun.
Yeah, you do.
Unless it's 117 degrees.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's where she falters a little bit.
Now I get it. This is why you like the snow-capped mountains. I get it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Well, I'll tell you, if you guys could, I would love to just kind of first start with an overview of Tour du Mont Blanc. What is it? Why do people do it? Can you just kind of give us some highlights of the adventure itself?
The vacation we did was about a 9-day hike, and we stop in a town every evening and cover that 110 miles that you were talking about, Scott, as the massif that is Tour du Mont Blanc. But it was just, you don't have, as you mentioned before, not carrying a camping pack. It's only a day pack with water and snacks, and it makes it really attractive. So you can, everyone can do it for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would add to that, you're doing, 10-ish miles a day, give or take. You're climbing 4,000 feet in elevation a day. It's completely accessible. And I'd like to think we were in true luxury every night, but that's probably a stretch. But you did get a warm bed every night, and that's pretty clutch.
A warm bed and a meal, I hope.
Yeah, an amazing company that's local.
And wine.
And
Lots of
wine.
Yeah,
wine.
Very
lots of good
good.
wine.
Very good. That's important. Okay, so where does the trip start in terms of the country, the city? Where do you fly into? How do you get to Mont Blanc?
Sure. So we flew in to Geneva, Switzerland, and took a car, just about an hour, hour and a half drive to Chamonix. And that's where it both starts and ends. And if you're Googling like the famous Tour du Mont Blanc trail race, that's exactly where it starts and ends too. So it's a pretty cool experience.
That's the you after you get into Geneva, you do cross the border into France, where Chamonix is France,
Mm.
actually.
Okay. And you mentioned the extreme race that happens there. So some people might be familiar with that. And you guys are athletes. Like tell us about that race that happens there. Cause I think you mentioned to me on the phone the other day that it was happening when you guys got there.
It was. It's called the UTMB, and it's an ultra marathon for trail runners. If you're a trail runner, you know about it. My father, when we told him we were doing this, he immediately was excited and asked for an autograph from a favorite runner who knew he was that avid of a runner. But so these guys are doing these guys and ladies are doing this race. I think the winning time was like 19 hours and 40 minutes or something this year. And that's the whole 110 miles. Insane. I think it's like 84,000 feet of elevation gain, up and down throughout that whole time. So we like to stroll hours, that 8 to 10 miles and drink plenty of wine
Yeah,
through
there you
our
go. So
trek.
if you really want to enjoy this adventure, you can take 110 miles to go around the Mont Blanc Massif. And I think you guys did, how many days did you guys take?
It's
I think 9 days.
9 days.
9 days.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So a little over a week, or if you like pain and suffering, you can do it in 19 hours through a trail run. So,
Exactly.
it's got a little something for everybody, which is kind of cool.
Yes, it does.
So let's talk about the scenery that you see when you're doing this trip. What are we looking at as we walk around this massive?
Oh my gosh, everything. It was so breathtaking. I mean, to paint a picture, mountains, points like knives in the sky, snow capped, the water leaking into, rivers and lakes, so many amazing waterfalls and glaciers. And then, the next day you'd see fields of green and wildflowers.
Mm.
Like it was crazy in that small amount of mileage, how different each and every step you took really was.
Yeah, it's so crazy because you think about like the Himalayas and these massive mountain ranges, and then this massive like, I mean, in the pictures, it looks like the Himalayas. It looks like the same kind of thing, but it's really just this compact little set of mountains, and it's so cool that you can circumvent the whole thing. I mean, 110 miles in retrospect, like it doesn't really seem like it's that far when you compare it to like some of
Mm-mm,
these massive mountain ranges, that people can do, which I think that's what makes this so appealing.
absolutely.
So what kind of people did you encounter along the way? And did you guys interact with people as you were kind of going around, or did you kind of largely stick to yourselves? Like what's that experience like in terms of the people that you see and meet?
It was cool. Cassandra picked out the trip, and it was a group. So we were with a group of, I think, 10 people
Okay.
and three guides. And one of the guides, Gianluca, was Italian. So he had an interesting sense of humor. And then there was two others that they were both from the UK. But it's very interesting to hear what they do and what they enjoy. And just so cool to see what they do that every day, every throughout the year. And then the group that we were with ranged from I think there was three of them that were retired, some younger professionals. It just ranged in what they did. One was a PA in the military and a retired nurse in the military. So
Yeah.
just a cool range of people too.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good mix too of people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that the funnest people that we met were the people who were hosting us. I mean,
Mm,
a couple of nights they were true hotels, but most of them were more B&B, almost like, hey, they had this decent sized house in the middle of nowhere and people started hiking there. And so they started like letting them in. And so, sometimes they spoke English and sometimes we needed a translator. But it was so cool to be able to experience, even if they couldn't speak English, they were sharing who they were through their food or through their drinks or through their smiles. And for me, like, that's what it was about.
that sounds really cool. So that's something so you went with an organized tour group. So they had all these the stops planned throughout the entire trip.
Yep.
And so I think I heard you say like some of the nights you're in hotels, but some of the nights you're actually at somebody's house or Airbnb, like a bed and
Yeah, it
breakfast.
was like a B&B, but it was
Got
kind
it.
of like someone's house. Like, you took off your shoes before you went in.
So cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then had a family style meal a few times with our group
Okay.
and with, it was, it was really cool to experience those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did you guys see you're with a group of 10, but did you kind of see similar, like the same people kind of, because you're sort of on the same sort of route? Did you see this other people in other groups that were sort of in parallel with y'all?
Not that many. I mean, we saw a few groups, but not really that many, which was interesting. I
And
can't
not
remember.
consistently. So, like,
Yeah,
we wouldn't
right.
see a group and then also see them the next day. Like, we wouldn't see the same people. And so I think there are different ways you can do the tour. It's not just
Yeah.
you have to take this very, very specific path. And my assumption too is just because of the lack of places to stop and stay, that the tours can't stop at the same spots
Got
because
it.
there's
So,
just not capacity.
and so that's pretty cool. Like, so on this hike, like, is it heavily trafficked? Like, are there a lot of people, or are you guys like, out by yourselves during the day when you're doing the hike?
You'll pass quite a few, depending on the day, you'll pass
Mhm.
quite a few people doing, if you're closer to like Chamonix, you see quite a few people, but as you get into the hike or some of those areas that, you don't have cell phone service or Wi-Fi at
Yeah.
this day, it was a little bit more scarce, but still there's quite a few people, um, but not that many.
Yeah.
And kind of the cool thing is either using French, Italian, uh, to say hello while you're walking by. As you walk by, you're always saying hello or bonjour, whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
Or mixing them up because you crossed a
Cassandra did
border
it.
and forgot.
Because you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I'm also kind of intrigued by like, you're out in nature, you're kind of hiking the mountains during the day, but then you're in more like of a civilized environment at night. Like, what was that balance like for you guys? Because I know like you've done a lot of other different kinds of trips, but like this one really spoke to you because you got that nice mix.
Well, when you say civilization, like I said, the one night I asked him, we were hiking to the hotel that evening and it had rained all day long. And it was that you'll probably get into that in a bit, but all we needed was like warmth. And I asked him where we're staying and he goes, you see that down there? Right there. And it was so far in the distance down below. And it looked like you could see like 4 buildings. I said, that's the town? He goes, yeah, they probably have 6 buildings, but that's where
Nice.
we're staying. So it was very interesting to, all right, experience that. And then when you walk in, it said no Wi-Fi, no cell phone service. You're gonna have
Okay.
to talk to each other. I'm like,
Nice.
cool.
I mean, there's something cool about that, right?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I think that was the coolest thing about this trip specifically is if we would
Yeah.
have planned it ourselves, I'm not sure we would have stopped at some of those spots.
Yeah.
Because we would have thought, oh no, like only one or two buildings in a whole town. Like, what if you need something? So it really forced us to, or not forced us, allowed us
Right.
to do some of those things.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. So tell us the tour company that you guys used for this adventure.
We used Wilderness Travel.
Wilderness Travel. Okay, we'll definitely make sure to include that in the show notes so people can check that out. So I want to go, like, how did you guys find this trip, and how did this whole thing even come about for you guys?
Full transparency, we had not booked a trip, and it was the spring, and we hadn't traveled for an entire year. And for me, I live off of traveling. I thrive off traveling. That's where I learn and where I grow and where I, feel energetic. And so started kind of researching, knew I've always wanted to do a multi-day hike, wasn't sure exactly where. Wanted to start with something accessible, right? Something that I didn't necessarily have to do a lot of training for. I, didn't have to learn anything about like tents or, putting my food together or anything like that. And so just started looking at different wilderness companies and did some research. Honestly, what I described to you early about the mountains, like carving out clouds in the sky, like that point, that's so different from the North Carolina mountains, which I also love, by the way. But like, I really like the snow-covered ones. I saw a photo of it and it got me. I was like, you know what? We've always wanted to go to Switzerland. Let's do it. And so I basically sent David an email and was like, hey, here's the cost. Here's the link. This is what we're doing. Here's what the, airlines will look like. You in? Because I'm booked.
And I was corrected this evening last night that I did not respond to the email. I'm pretty sure I responded in a phone call or we talked about it, but I said absolutely yes.
Okay.
But I booked it. We were going, and it was only
yes.
like 3 months out. So.
All right. So I want to go there. Like, Cassandra, for you, it's these like knife pointed mountains that carve the clouds. I love that visual, by the way. And I totally, anybody that Googles Mont Blanc massive images, like they're going to see it. Like you see these pictures and it's like, wow. Like, but I guess I'm curious, like for you, because you found this, you decided like, this is what we're going to do. Like, what is it about those mountains? What is it about that imagery that calls at you?
That's such a good question that I'm not even sure I have an answer for. And I think it probably changes on the day. When I look at those types of mountains, I just see this like fierce approach to life. Like, like at the very tippy top, there's so much weather and changing behaviors. And that mountain has just seen so much. And without trying to sound like, I don't know, crazy, it's like, it just has so much to teach you about life. And for me, I look at it and I just think, wow, like I am so small. That mountain is so big and there's this giant world out there. And I'm just like this tiny piece. And it just like makes all your problems and it makes, I don't know, those things that stress you out, it just kind of makes them melt away a little bit.
Man, it's like, the smallness that you feel next to those mountains. So one of the things, and I haven't actually talked about it in a few episodes, but one of the things that I love talking about early on in this podcast was one of my favorite words, which is awe. And I looked it up early on in this podcast and they talked about it with a lot of people. But if you look at the dictionary, the Oxford Languages version, awe is defined as a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder.
Oh my God, yes.
And you just described it.
100%. Oh.
You just described that. So I love, you said a fierce approach to life. And man, I just love that. That's so epic. And so David, Cassandra comes to you with this trip and says, I want to book this. Are you in? And like, so I want like, what you said yes, but was there decision making? Like what happened for you?
No, it's immediately yes. Just like she said, the flight, everything was already taken care of once you get there. So there's no decisions to make. You don't have to think when we go somewhere. The last thing I want to do is figure out where we want to go to eat at the end of the day with a hike. And it was all done. It was like an all inclusive, but you actually work during you hike during the day. It's really super fun. But no, it's just looking at the mountains. The picture that I saw, it was gorgeous. I always did want a Mont Blanc pen, but we found out that those are made in Germany, so not
And they're
um,
very
Oh,
expensive.
and very
did
expensive,
you
which
feel shortchanged?
I did, very shortchanged. um, but no, just the exploration of mountains in general, and the hiking, the challenging, and overcoming any fears that you have. Always wanted to be an explorer, so it's really cool.
Yeah, you just made me think. It's like it's just amazing what our bodies can do
Mm.
as well. And I think that's something that draws us into like big hikes or multi-day adventures. It's like we are all so much stronger and like capable than I think any of us think we are. And sometimes those adventures just like ignite that a little bit in you.
I love that. So, can we talk about that a little bit? So you said we're a lot more capable than we think we are. We're stronger and more capable. So did you guys find yourselves being tested on this hike?
Yes, I would say there was a time that we were very tested, and I was very nervous. I don't know about you, Cassandra.
So before the hike, I was definitely nervous. Like at first, I was really excited. I was like, "Oh yeah, I got this." But
Yeah.
then the closer we got, it was really, really hot out, and so we didn't practice hiking. And so I was kind of like, "Ooh, I hope I can make it." And I was really sore after day 1 and 2. But then your body just like recoups and you go. I will say that day of pure rain and cold weather absolutely challenged me. It was to the point where the only thing you could see is the person's foot in front of you, and you had to follow it pretty quickly because if not, you were losing the group and you were off path.
and
And it
and
was
don't
just
fall in the mud.
yeah, and don't fall. I mean, all the things. And we've hiked in rain before, but not not quite like that. Uh, but I mean, we did it, and it was one of the toughest days, not only weather-wise, but elevation-wise and length-wise. And maybe that's why that hotel that we walked to that was in the middle of nowhere is so bright in our minds too, because sometimes it's the not so, picturesque days that you remember the most. And I don't know.
It started raining when we were hiking. It was pouring down rain, and we walked up we were walking up this old Roman road, which was
Mm.
so cool. But then as you kept climbing and climbing and climbing, I think we ended up going like almost 5,000 feet that day in
Mm.
gain, and then loss. And I think we passed a glacier at one point, but when we got kind of towards the top, you're soaking wet. When Cassandra's hands get cold, or anybody's hands get cold for that matter, kind of like sends your body into. I was very nervous for us. I would recommend waterproof gloves, wool, and then a covering on that. I learned that's what I was going to buy when I got back. That's for sure.
When
What
you
he's
get
politely saying is he was concerned that I was going to get frostbite on my fingers, but I didn't. They were good.
was it cold?
Uh, it was, yes. And then we had to I don't know why we did it, but we had to get into a mini shelter. So it's typically like 6 people, but another person fit in. So it was like 7 people in this little shelter. And by shelter, it was just like a bag that everybody kind of sits in. And so you're in there and you kind of use your hiking poles to like post up, and the ground's covered in, it's wet, muddy, and you're trying to like keep warm, change into something that's going to be warm, and you're soaking wet. It
Do
was
you
very
remember?
difficult.
Yeah, do you remember as a kid, Scott, you would like go in elementary school and you'd have this giant, like circular, almost like tent material thing, and you would bring
Yeah,
it
the
up, and
parachute.
then you try to get
Absolutely.
underneath it. Okay, that's what it was like, but it was small, and 7 people got in, and then we all had to change into our warm clothing and get out of our wet
And
stuff.
it was super windy too. Not only rainy, super windy, cold, and so it was like blowing away as you're trying to keep it together and trying to also change kind of clothes inside. It
Yeah.
was it was I thought we were just gonna like, all right, I don't know if we can finish this hike. I don't know how to get off this mountain at this point.
This is wild. So like help me understand like the lead that sounds really like so the lead up to that. What's happening? Like why are you getting into this shelter? Is there a storm going on that you're trying to protect from? Like
It was kind of to rest for a few because we had been going straight up all day,
okay.
and just get a snack in you, because it was probably about noon, and we had another about an hour until we got to a refuge, which is also another experience, with that one. But yeah, that it was just to get a snack, get some water, just kind of recoup for a second.
In fairness, we were also with a group, and so there was, like, a small group of slower hikers and then a
Mhm.
small group of faster hikers, and we were in the faster hikers. So I think part of it too is because of that visibility with the really strong rain and clouds and fog, we wanted to make sure that they didn't get lost and we didn't get disconnected from them. And so us, the faster group, got inside, did the things that we needed to do while also allowing them to catch up with us.
That's
I think
exactly
that
why
was,
Got
that
it.
was exactly a good way to remember that.
Got it.
yeah,
So the guide come this is just kind of a standard thing. They have these shelters and they stop to give you guys a break from the elements essentially just to
mhm,
kind of
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And now everyone who's climbed in any type of crazy weather is like, these people, it couldn't have been that bad.
Yeah,
But it
well,
was just funny. We had never experienced it before, you know?
totally. And so what I love about it, I mean, like we've talked about the fact that this trip is something that's very accessible
Mhm.
to many people. Like, so talk about the level of challenge that this trip presents for somebody, and who is the like the ultra marathon piece aside, like who is this trip for?
It was rated as like 5 stars from a challenge perspective, but honestly, it wasn't that bad. There was another Dave in the group, and I was fast Dave and he was slow Dave, but they did a great job of the guys did a great job of pacing because Cassandra and I and Ryder tend to go fast, and having that pace also was pretty exciting on the days that you could actually see stuff
Yeah.
because you can kind of take in the scenery while you're hiking, which was even better. I tripped quite a few times because I'm awe and looking at things as I hike.
Yeah, I would say it's for the everyday worker outer. I mean, anyone who's like into fitness, who feels strong, who feels in shape, and or plans to get to that point prior to the trip could do it. I
Yeah.
don't think you have to be a runner. I don't think you have to necessarily practice hiking. I think you just need to kind of feel good enough and grow that confidence enough because I think anyone can do it.
So, are you guys familiar? I think we talked about the Camino de Santiago, which is
Mhm.
a walk, yeah, across Spain. And so it sounds to me like this is maybe like a level up from that, but it's not. It's certainly not like a mountain trek, like a certainly not an Everest kind of a mountain trek. More accessible for somebody that just wants to take a 9 day trip and see
Yeah,
some majestic mountains. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Maybe similar to like Inca,
Got it. Yeah. So did you
I
guys
would
have to
say.
do training? Did you guys feel like you had to train for this trip?
Not for this trip, but we both do regularly train. And so I strength train 4-ish days a week and do yoga and walk daily. We do about 3 miles a day. And then David kind of same, except instead of yoga, it's soccer. And so we did not have to train for this trip. Some of the people in our group did. We had a girl who, walked, I don't know, I can't even remember, like 5 miles a day with a backpack with a, 40-pound something in there, like kettlebell at a elevation, 5 days a week or something. And
Yeah, she put her
so I
treadmill
think
straight up.
I think it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Whatever's going to allow you to feel comfortable and confident to do it. I
Got
say
it.
do it.
And
You
did your
know,
tour company give you some guidelines on how best to prepare?
yes, and like we
Cool.
had to fill out forms and stuff and get our
Cool.
doctor's permission to actually go on the trip, and so they were pretty extensive to
Yeah.
make sure that you were ready
Yeah.
because it is a group travel, and you want to make sure that one person isn't feeling left out or vice versa.
Yeah. So David, you mentioned like a couple times like the meal, the wine. You know what's so cool about this is like I'm thinking about like the rain day, right? You're in the rain, you're in the shelter, like it's uncomfortable, it's hard, it's suffering, but at the end of every single day, you get a small celebration.
That's it. That's kind of why I mean we haven't done many or any through hikes before because I don't want to tote my beers with me or wine with us afterwards. But that is exactly it. I love to sit down, have a
Yeah.
drink, and enjoy what we just accomplished,
Yeah.
and think about the day, just reflecting on it and what challenges we had and what we overcame. That to me is my favorite part about the hiking is then
Yeah.
towards the end when you get to reflect on that.
Yeah. And I mean, I just love like there is something about that because there definitely are other treks that you can do where it's just hard, right, for 10 days or whatever it is. But this one, like you get these like, you get these hard days, but then you get celebrations every single night along the way. So it's like you put in the work and then you celebrate and you put in the work. And it's just I think it's really interesting because I think a lot of us in life have a hard time celebrating like the smaller wins. And so like this is actually a tripler. I guess I'm kind of curious, like in your lives, like do you guys find yourself when you're not on trips, do you guys find it easy to celebrate like along the way? Or what is that like for you guys in life? I'm just curious.
I definitely try to. I try to be intentional about celebrating the small wins. In my opinion, it's those small things that make up your every day. If you can't enjoy every day, what is 1 week out of the year? It's nothing. I mean, that's not going to fulfill you. That's not going to keep
Yeah.
you excited and thriving in life. You have to find those small everyday things.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's how I try. So I don't know that we do a great job at it all the time. Um, but I like to celebrate little things. The dog's birthday, like I make huge things out of our birthdays, holidays, Fridays,
Fridays.
Sundays.
There you go. I love it. David, how would you answer? I'm curious your answer to that too.
I'm not as good as celebrating the small things. That's one thing I need to get better at.
Mhm.
I'm looking, I guess, overall, I'm not looking at those as often as I should.
Yeah.
And I need to do better on that one for sure.
I mean, I'm right there with you, and I think that's just one of the things I'm noticing about this trip is it's like strategically built that way, and so that's just so cool. Like, what a great way to train to like celebrate every single day.
Yeah, that's such a cool call out. I might have to use that next week in my yoga class, Scott.
I love it. I wanted to talk about that. You gotta save time for that too.
There
I'll quote
was
you, don't
a
worry.
there was a point when we're talking to the guide that you have the first like 3 days, and then day 3 is like your hardest day, and then day 4 is a rest day, and then you finish it out. And the guides mentioned how it's kind of cool to watch people's body as they, day 1, day 2, day 3 after the
Mhm.
toughest day and that rest day, and then they come back stronger on day 5, 6, 7, 8. I
Yeah.
thought that was a really interesting fact that they notice about the hikers. I don't know if you have anything more on that, Cassandra, but
I mean, no, but just similar to how you were talking about every day, trying to celebrate the small wins, it's same with that.
Yeah.
Too often we forget that we have to rest.
Yeah.
And that rest is not a downtime. What rest is a recovery time. It's to allow us to do all of the things tomorrow. And whether that's working out rest, whether that's, alone time rest, whatever that means, I think we too often forget to add that to our schedule.
Rest and recovery. I mean,
Mhm.
this is again, this is so cool because like, so many of these like adventure sports, I mean, so many it's like, let's see how far we can push the limits of our body.
Mhm.
And then so many people like do that and then forget about the recovery. And so
Yep.
again, I kind of love this trip because it's got that built in. It's
Mhm.
the push and then the recovery. I love it.
Mhm.
That's super cool. And so, Cassandra, you mentioned the yoga piece, and I wanted to get into that a little bit because you guys do have this connection with the mountains. And Cassandra, you have done such a beautiful job of posting yoga poses in cool places. I'm sure there's going to be some photos of you doing some poses at Mont Blanc on the Tour de Mont Blanc. But the thing I love about your posts is it's typically a picture of you in a yoga pose in a beautiful natural environment with some written wisdom.
Mhm.
And I just kind of wondered, like, I think it's like to me, there's like this, the wisdom is sort of representative for me of the mind. And then there's the natural beauty, which is just sort of like nature in the world. And then the yoga is like your breath. And I wondered if you could sort of just talk about how you integrate all this, like this particular adventure trip, all of your adventure trips, and then how you kind of weave in the mind and the body piece as well.
Oh boy, that's a big question.
It is.
So I'll try to keep it really short. When I look at yoga, I look at it as a lifestyle. So there's all different facets of yoga. It's not just the physical practice, but it is that mental practice. And
Mhm,
and it really just comes down to connection to breath, connection to your body, connection to other people even.
mhm.
And that's really why we travel, right? It's to explore different areas. It's to learn how different people, live their lives so that we can become better humans, really, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean traveling and doing some crazy adventure across the world, but it can. Sometimes that can be, your own town trying something new or saying hi to somebody new. And so I try to just like live out my yoga. And it sounds kind of silly and it's not easy. It's always reminding myself over and over to do that. But I love going on adventures and reflecting afterwards and thinking through, the challenges or something maybe that I could have done differently or would like to do next time. And that often inspires me to write those yoga poses. Sometimes it's a conversation. This week I talked to my class about one of our guides. I was actually asking him if he finds that most people are really excited about the adventure and if you make a change to the itinerary that they just get it. Sometimes you have to based off of weather or trafficked trails and or if he finds that people complain. And his response to me was a bit of a laugh and it was kind of like, well, I'd like to think of them as requests. And I was like, oh my God, yes. Like one small shift, one tiny word change, and it opens up the conversation instead of closing the door. It turns probably anger and frustration into this kind of let's talk it through, let's deal with it. Maybe I take that request, maybe I don't, and then I, toss it away instead of putting things like that into your backpack and it being heavier and heavier as you walk. And so I just take all of that stuff and I try to share it and I try to learn from it and I try to grow from it and it's all about being intentional with, what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're moving, who you're with.
Yeah, and so I'm curious, like where does like the wisdom piece, like the words that are in your post, like what is typically the inspiration for those posts and for that wisdom?
Yeah. So it just depends. Sometimes it's conversation, right, with the tour guide or a local. Sometimes it's staring at a mountain and listening. Allowing them to speak to me. It sounds so corny, but it's like I mentioned earlier on the call, the mountains shift constantly based off of their weather patterns and we're constantly shifting in life. So it's like taking what nature is showing us is real, what nature is telling us is okay in trying to make that our life.
Mm.
So it just depends. Sometimes it comes from somebody else. Sometimes it comes from my journal at night. Sometimes it comes from a quote that I, read.
Yeah.
I try to source it though, because it's not me. It's somebody else or some, adventure that's really feeding it.
Yeah. I love it so much. And David, you're not getting off the hook here because you're involved. Like you are literally behind the scenes because you're generally the person taking the pictures.
Yes, I am, and that is very important. Gotta get it.
It is very
Very
important.
especially after, as we're walking and, 8 miles in, I'm like, hey, this would be a great spot for a yoga pic. Okay, what are you gonna do? She's got to think about it, and how tired is she? But she still does it, and I got to make sure I get that shot.
I mean, your typical post is like a perfectly balanced position. And I'm like, how in the world? Like, it's impressive, right? And I guess I'm curious, like, David, like, how long do you have to take to get this shot? Is it, I mean, talk to me about this.
Oh, it's tough. I gotta make sure, and then I try and get the background of it all, and as much background as possible. Well, so that Cassandra is just a small piece of the picture. No
Yeah.
offense, but yeah, that's the biggest thing is seeing what's there.
Yeah, because then I'll take a look at that photo and I'll look at the background and I'll say, like, what is this photo telling me? Like, if I'm in an arm balance, maybe it's talking about balance, but maybe it has nothing to do with the posture and it has everything to do with the fields behind me. Maybe it's how I look in that field. And sometimes that's also inspiring.
Yeah. So
They're all done in one shot though. I'm that good.
all done in one
she's
shot?
that good. No, I'm kidding.
So, I mean, is there a thread? David, I'm going to pick on you for this one. Like, is there a thread between the yoga and the wisdom and the nature and the trips and honestly, like, I'm kind of looking and when I'm reading the intro, what you guys do for a living, you're both in helping professions, fire and safety, working for hospitals. Like, you guys are like, it's a very like connected, helping way of life. I'm curious, like, that thread that kind of runs between all of them.
Well, that's a good observation. I never thought of it that way, honestly. That we're both in the hospital and first responder type stuff. That's I don't know. I'm gonna have to defer to you, Cassandra. I need to think about that. You got me on the spot.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that at the root of our lives, we really enjoy helping. I think whether that's in friendships and families and our work. Um, and I think we're both good at what we do. And so we took kind of that boxed career, right? And found a way to do it in a place that's ultimately making a bigger difference. So,
Yeah.
you hope that hospitals and healthcare systems are ultimately making a really positive impact on the world. And you hope that the fire departments are coming together and saving people and making that positive impact. And I think if it comes down to it, that's what we want to do too. Um, we
Yeah.
just want to be with people and hope that we are able to give them one small little nugget that makes them happy or makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah. And I see you guys as people in this helping profession, but the yoga, the nature trips, the adventure trips, like this is a way for you guys to go, get your tanks filled up so that you can come back
Yeah.
and do what you do very well and help. And it's important, the work that you guys do. I'm curious. So I love this trip. I don't know if you have any final thoughts about just, I would guess I would love to get your advice on whether it's this trip or sort of any adventure. Like, for this one, if you're short on time, this isn't like you don't have to take a month-long trip for this one. This is, I'm guessing you probably need 2 weeks when you include the travel time, but 9 days. I mean, what advice do you have for people that maybe are limited on time or have some other reason why they're not ready to pull the trigger on the adventure that they've been dreaming of?
I say now's the time. Do it. You just make it happen. Conquer your fear, whatever that actually is. Uh, go for it. It's totally worth it when you do it. And from a time perspective, this one was 9 days. They actually cut it down. It's technically probably an 11 or 12-day trek,
Okay.
but they cut it down to 9 so that they could fit it in because the company realized that there was a, 2 weeks is starting to really, pull it at people that can get away.
Yeah.
So, but they also offer, 3, 4, 5-day hikes where, all around the world. So, pick it out and go for it. There's plenty. Yes.
I think ready is fake. Like there's no such thing as being ready for anything. You're going to do it scared, or you're going to do it with a fear of missing out at work or missing out on life. But like, if to David's point, if you don't just book it, you're never going to
I love
get
that.
out there.
There's no such thing as ready. That's a quote right there. Man, I love it. So, David, you talked about just doing it, just get after it, just go do it. But this isn't your first adventure. You guys have been on a number of awesome adventures. Like, do you guys think back to like that first adventure and what you had to do to like cross over that threshold to say yes and book that trip? Was it harder the first time, or has it always just been about just getting after it?
No, my problem that I have is I'm indecisive when it comes to what I want to do. I look at, in Microsoft on your computer, it always comes up with like a picture of a national park or something cool. I'm like, that looks awesome. I need to go there. And so the list is so long that I want to go everywhere. So I never make the decision, and Cassandra takes care of it.
You made the most important decision. You said, I do. And then she plans the trip. And then you say, okay, just go for it. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. That was awesome. You guys, you've been on so many different trips. This one, I'm really inspired by. I'm definitely printing a picture of this one. It's going on my vision board. I'm going to do this trip at some point in my life. I love it. And I think Hollywood's going to pick up on all this stuff that you guys are doing. And they're going to want to make a movie about your life someday. And so I want to know, for both of you, when they make the movie about your life, who's going to be the actor and the actress that's going to play you guys in this movie?
So I couldn't figure out just one. I don't know if it's going to be Charlie Day or Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, nice.
Oh my God.
Nice.
And then the movie, I think I have to go back to what Cassandra and I our standard hashtag that we always go to, and it's called Raycation, but it's HRA.
Oh yeah.
Cation, and that's what we use because our last name is Hradek, and
Yes.
Cation, yeah, you get it.
Love it.
That or just Expedition Hradek. I couldn't figure out which one.
I like that a lot.
Name of
That's
your
awesome.
movie?
Yeah.
So we've got Charlie Day and Ryan Reynolds. Cassandra, do you have a pick between the two? Charlie Day and Ryan Reynolds?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really, really tough one. I don't want to be that person, but probably Ryan Reynolds.
Okay.
But I do love me some Charlie Day.
All right, very good.
He
well,
could be
Cassandra,
either.
your turn. Who's going to play you?
Oh, Betty White. Rest in peace. Oh
Betty
my
White.
dang.
Yeah.
Yes. She's amazing. So full of life. She loved animals. She just talk about someone who did adventures. She did her life as an adventure. She is just was the coolest human being, and I just wish I knew her.
Amazing. I love that. That's one of the coolest answers I've gotten on this podcast. That's awesome. All right, Expedition Hradek. And I'm going to see this movie. So we're not sure if it's Charlie Day or Ryan Reynolds, but Betty White is going to be in this movie. I love it.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. Well, you guys, thank you so much for spending the time with me. I think this was just such a cool adventure. I can't wait to hear what your next adventure is going to be. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope David and Cassandra's story has encouraged you to listen to that voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. David, Cassandra, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you guys
so much for having us.